We are waiting for it. We could have left right after he disappeared into the trees, but he looked so sure he kept us waiting. No one said so, but after 2 hours we knew that this was really happening. Of course we feel bad for Marnie, but if I could say one last word for her, it would not be stop. Instead of thank you. Because he left and not me. So if I have feelings for Marnie, it's gratitude, not pity. After all, in the end, he was the one who had to go. He was the one who found it. A small stone chapel that stands in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by a line of trees. Marnie was the first to see it and immediately jumped into the grass, then asked us to follow her. How come we've never seen the chapel before? Maybe the chapel didn't want to be found. Situated at the most remote place we have ever explored, it feels like being right in the heart of the forest. The air is cold. More than that, felt the aura of death. Nothing moved or made a sound. I know that place shouldn't be found. Not by human eyes. Too sacred. There are several rows of long benches and a towering stone altar. And there are still others. Those living in that place are more real than they seem. I wanna go, but Marnie thinks this place is cute. Why did they build a chapel in a place like this? He said. We shouldn't have. Of course it was Marnie's idea. Let's do a ritual sacrifice to please the gods, he chuckled. Elizabeth also laughed. Marnie preaches at random at the altar and we sit on the stone benches around her with our heads bowed. It felt so ridiculous at the time, and maybe things would have been better if we had stopped, but Marnie insisted. We need sacrifices, said Marnie. The others went looking, but I remained seated. I should have just left, but there was something off about that place. I feel connected to the place. Feels good. Marnie returned, smiling, clutching a small lizard. He carried the lizard in front of him, muttering a strange tone of praise. Marnie came up to the altar, clutching the lizard in one hand. Elizabeth gave him a stone. Elizabeth looked a little doubtful then. Marie held the stone with her other hand, lifting it high above her head. Noble gods who guard this forest, he shouted loudly, accept this sincere offering in exchange for your immortality. Then Dai Hunjamkan stone down. Some of us were shocked. I don't think any of us thought he actually did it. Black blood stains splattered on the altar. A cold wind blew across the field. It was then that I realized we had woken them up. The others must have felt it too, because everyone wanted to get out of there, even Marnie. Marnie waited a full week before she asked us to come back to the place with her. He said it like it was a joke, but I could tell he was already consumed by the thought. His eyes lost their light. We went with him to the edge of the forest. And we all stepped back. He laughed at us, mocked us cowards. We are afraid, but we are not stupid. Marnie tried to persuade us, but in the end she gave up. Marnie decides to go alone. And we let it. It's easier not to talk about it. The police asked many questions, but we never added what had happened in the forest. We all decided to stay away from the place, except for Elizabeth. He kept talking about it. He becomes obsessed. He begged us to come back again. He said Marnie called him. He said that he could feel the place calling him. It makes me cringe because I feel it too. Woke up every night feeling like my heart would explode if I didn't come back to that place one more time. It seemed that feeling had a greater effect on Elizabeth. He had been close to Marnie when it happened. Perhaps they had sensed his presence. So we all arrived there, on the outskirts of the forest, at the same place Marnie had left us. The others tried to question Elizabeth's will, but she didn't care. As I watched Elizabeth disappear into the woods, I whispered a final goodbye. We are waiting again. I don't know why. When Marnie went there, there was still the certainty that she would come back, but this time I don't think we want her to come back. How long are we waiting? For as long as possible. We could hardly believe it when Elizabeth emerged from the woods. He walked out like nothing happened. He's so full of claw marks and messed up, I don't even know if it's still him. He walked towards us, then stood there looking at us one by one with a small smile of hope on his face. In his hand he held a heavy, sharp stone. "Look at this," he said, and he smashed the rock into his left eye. Blood streamed down his face. He let out a strange shriek, some kind of horrible mix of laughter, crying and screaming. We run. We left him there still screaming and laughing laughter. His loud roar was the last thing I heard from Elizabeth. The damage from the eye wound was irreparable and he was committed to a mental hospital. Until now he is still there. But actually that wasn't the last thing I heard from Elizabeth. I saw him once about a month after that incident. Her body is still the same, but her soul is no longer Elizabeth. He sat there and just stared at me, still with his thin empty smile, his only one eye following my every move. I tried talking to him. I want to apologize for what I don't know. He didn't respond, just sat there and smiled. I wasn't there long enough, it was no use either. He waited until I was nearing the exit before he spoke. Some kind of warning, or maybe it's his way of showing that I should also be responsible. Even though I don't really care for it. The trees. The trees. They come from the trees. They wanted you, but they got me.